A girl goes missing and almost disappears from the earth. The police think it's one of the pranks played by the girl, and so a former police officer, who is also the girl's neighbor, decides to step in, not knowing what he is about to get into. It is 1995 in the Ura Valley, Bhutan. A group of 4 friends, Greg, Fiona, Ruthie, and Paul, go hiking in the mountains. They pass by a group of monks on a truck and soon reach a bridge. The bridge is a little shaky, which scares the group, but they continue to walk on it. At the end of day 1, they decided to go down back as it slowly started to thunder. While they are talking, Paul hears a strange whistle. While following it, he falls into a crevice. Greg quickly heads down and finds him in an almost catatonic state, all the while staring at a massive and a peculiar inhumane skeleton that is embedded in the cave wall. Paul could not get his eyes off it. When Greg offers to help, Paul faintly whispers, "If you touch me, you die." Not paying heed, Greg touches him, and as soon as he does, Paul starts to cry. He, along with the girls, gets him outside the crevice, carries him, and starts to head backward. While the group stops to take a breath, Ruthie spots a house. The house is empty, and the group decides to take refuge in it to be safe from the snowstorm. Ruthie finds a stick-like thing in Paul's hand while Greg checks him. Ruthie wishes to take Paul and get to a hospital as soon as possible, but the weather is her barrier. At night, Ruthie hears someone's footsteps outside the room, but when she goes to check, she finds no one. The night passes by. The next morning, when Paul and Ruthie are all alone, she spots someone in the snow. Thinking the person can help her, she gets out of the house and calls for help. As soon as Ruthie could see who the person is, she runs inside the house and locks the door. It is the spirit of the creature in the cave. When she shares her happenings with Greg and Fiona, they do not believe her. Paul is slowly possessed by the evil spirit. The same night, Ruthie does not find Paul in the room and also finds his jacket missing. They find him next to a bridge they crossed where he is sitting cross-legged. He blows air into the stick he had brought along and hears a faint growl from the end of the bridge. While Greg and Fiona are arguing, the spirit whispers something in Ruthie's ears. Ruthie becomes dazed and stabs Greg in the back continuously and slices off Fiona's throat and then throws their bodies off the cliff. She looks at Paul before eliminating herself too by throwing herself off the cliff. Paul continues to blow the whistle. It is now Missouri in the year 2018. Former detective James LaSombra is grieving his wife Allison and his son Henry's death. They both died in a car accident a year ago. After having lunch, James returns back home. While looking at the mail, he sees his neighbor Amanda sitting on a bench opposite his pool. Amanda pays James a visit to know whether he is coping with their deaths or still grieving. She tells him that she was devastated after her father's death 2 years ago, but soon found something that made her feel good, as nothing is real. Even after James told her of things being real, she still continues to explain her point passionately. Amanda leaves after she gets a call from her mother, Nora. Nora and James are friends too. The next morning, when Nora goes to check on her daughter, she finds out that she had run away. She soon calls James. The police arrive and they start to check her room. On the bathroom mirror, they find a message, "The empty man made me do it," written in blood. The police start to inquire about Amanda and whether she dealt with depression. When Nora tells them about the panic attack Amanda had the other day in school where she started crying, the police think Amanda ran away from home and that she is acting in distress to hurt her mother. Nora loses hope in the police. James starts to look around the room, while simultaneously talking to Nora when he sees Amanda's book in which she wrote, "He is everywhere." Nora thinks it's just Peter. James decides to start the investigation himself and asks Nora to make a list of her friends. The next day, he visits Amanda's school where he meets her friend, Devara Walsh. He starts to record their conversation without her knowing. When he starts to ask about Amanda, Devara tells him of the story that is going around in school, wherein if you visit a bridge in the dark and you find an empty bottle, and if you blew into it while thinking of him, something happens. It is believed that after one blows into the bottle, one can hear the empty man come towards you, and all one could think of is him. On the second night, one can see him, and on the third night, he comes to get the person that blew into the bottle. She confesses that they had tried to test the theory that night. Lisa, Duncan, Meyer, Brandon, Amanda, and Devara had gone to a bridge where everybody summoned the empty man by blowing into a bottle Amanda found in a corner. While everyone is standing while they blow into the bottle, Amanda sits down cross-legged and blows into the bottle twice before chanting the empty man. The leaves on the bridge start to rumble, and they hear bottles rumbling followed by a faint whistle and footsteps. Everybody ran away. The next day, she saw Amanda in the mall, who was whispering something in Brandon's ear, just like Paul whispered in Ruthie's ears in Bhutan. While talking to James, she spots her friends from the bridge sit cross-legged staring at her. She panics and leaves but gives her address to James before leaving. After talking to Devara, James knocks on Brandon's door and hears a woman sobbing. Brandon's father tells him that he has been missing. He then heads to Lisa's house and finds the door open, but no one there. He finds a pamphlet of Pontifex Institute that he had also found in Amanda's room. After looking around her house, he spots a dog dead in their backyard with flies around it. He then calls Nora and informs her that all of Amanda's friends expect Devara is missing or has disappeared, and also asks about the Pontifex Institute, but Nora is as confused as James. He parks his car opposite the bridge Amanda and her friends visited 2 nights ago. While walking, he finds the empty bottle and starts to blow inside it, just like they had done 2 nights ago. He thinks it is just a made-up story and throws the bottle off the bridge and starts to head inside. In the middle, he feels someone's eyes on him, but he brushes it off and continues walking. He finds an open gutter on the floor and heads there. As soon as he steps inside, he finds Brandon's body followed by Amanda's friends' bodies, hanging with the same words he saw on the bathroom mirror, "The empty man made me do it." Amanda is still missing. James calls the police and the investigation resumes. Unknown to the happenings, Devara heads off to the steam room in the spa where she is relaxing and is all alone but soon feels a presence. It is the spirit who attacks her inside. The head of the case, Detective Villiers, believes the opposite, as he shares a case of a mother in Maryville who fed her new family member to a pack of stray dogs because she said that the family member had been whispering to her and that she wrote "the empty man" in the kitchen on the linoleum floor. He found the same thing near Devara's body too. James heads home that night and starts to listen to the recordings of his conversation with Devara again. He then searches about the Pontifex Institute and finds that it is a cult that has beliefs originating from Bhutan and in Tuplas. Nora knocks on James' door, and while she sets up dinner for him, she breaks down. While sleeping, James swears he hears the voices of the empty man and is surrounded by nightmares. The next morning, James pays a visit to the Pontifex Institute, where after a conference he attends, he meets the leader of the cult, Arthur Parson. While talking to Arthur, he is alarmed at his reference to the empty man and how he claims him to be an entity that provides his followers with whatever they want as long as they do his bidding. After their talk, James looks around the premises and finds a line of beds in the basement, followed by a group of men sitting cross-legged while whispering something and staring at a black rectangle. He walks down further and sees a group of people whisper again when his watch starts to beep. The people think it's the empty man and start to blow in the bottle again, but soon realize it is a human. James is caught trespassing. He meets a boy who tells him about the camp in the forest off Route 32 near the Murrumbek River Bridge and soon starts to drive there. When he reaches there, he finds an old, empty cabin. He starts to look around and find files on Amanda, her friends, Paul, and himself. He also finds a TV that shows a group holding hands and praying while one of the boys starts to choke. The same boy starts to draw a picture of a woman on the walls, and when James looks to his side, he spots the exact same picture and realizes it is the same room where they had recorded the video. After the video ends, James starts to think that he sees the empty man. It is already night when he walks through a plank of wood and reaches its other side where he finds another cabin. The cult is performing a fire ritual but gets spotted, after which they start to follow him. James gets into his car and hurriedly runs away. He meets with Detective Villiers and tells him about everything including the cult, but is not happy with the reaction he gets from the detective. Leaving for the precinct, he meets with Nora and tells her of the possibility that Amanda is now a member of the cult. When he is telling her of the possibilities, the phone rings. Nora picks it up, but gets no response from the other side and gives the phone to James. When James picks up the call, he starts to hear whispering from the other side. Thinking it is safe for Nora to get away from the house, they leave and she hides in a hotel. It is later revealed that James was cheating on his wife Allison with Nora and that he was with her the night Allison and Henry passed away. James starts to hallucinate and he abruptly wakes up. While trying to light a cigarette, he feels someone's presence in the house. Outside the door, he sees a teddy bear. Thinking there is no harm, he gets it inside. It has now been 3 days since he has been on the bridge. He follows the cult members to a place with the teddy bear in his backseat and reaches the hospital. Inside the hospital, the cult members are kneeling down and bowing to a man who is on the ventilator machine. He ambushes a cult member, Garrett, and asks him what is happening and who were the cult members bowing and kneeling down to. Garrett tells James that the man is like an antenna and that cult members receive messages from him. The empty man talks to him, who then talks to the cult member. James thinks Garrett is lying, and he stops at an isolated place and orders him to get on his knees before shoving a gun to his head. Garrett knows that James gets glimpses and dreams from the past that feel like déjà vu to him. He continues saying how everything is unreal and keeps praising the empty man and his powers. James asks him whether he knows where Amanda, and Garrett says she is on the bridge, but later starts to laugh, saying there is no bridge. James is now frustrated. He brutally strikes him and leaves him on the road. It was nighttime. James again finds a file of his name, and this time, it contains all the information about him and his family. On further looking, he finds that the man in the hospital is actually Paul, who is in a comatose state, and is regularly visited by the cult members to get messages from him, which is passed on by the empty man. He quickly rushes to the hospital, but on his way, he hears voices replaying everything. When he enters the hospital, he finds Amanda in Paul's room, where she explains to him that Paul is dying from the strain of being the empty man, and that the cult needs a new vessel. Suddenly, James starts to feel weird. Amanda informs him that he is a tulpa, a new vessel for the being, and that his memories have been fabricated by her and the cult to ensure the deity's connection through his pain and loss. She also said that James has only existed for a few days, but he does not believe her and calls Nora, who is confused and does not know who he is. James breaks down. He finds himself in a limbo-like dimension where he sees and feels the entity enter his body. He enters Paul's room and shoots him. He then walks out of the room, where he finds himself surrounded by several members of the hospital staff who bow down to him.